I'll never forget the sound of her laughter that autumn afternoon. It wasn't the kind that brings warmth to a room. No, this was different. It was sharp, cutting through my small kitchen like glass shattering on tile. She stood there, designer purse hanging from her manicured fingers, looking at my chipped dishes and faded curtains as if they were evidence of some great personal failure. And maybe in her eyes they were. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that these walls had held more love than her marble countertops ever would. Life has a peculiar way of teaching us that lesson. Sometimes gently, sometimes not. Welcome, my dear. This is Grandma Alice Stories, where every tale carries a lesson and every wound carries wisdom. Pull up a chair, pour yourself some tea, and settle in close. What I'm about to share isn't easy for me to tell, but it's a story that needs telling. Because sometimes the people who judge us the harshest are the ones who need us the most. And karma? Well, karma never forgets an address. It was October when everything started to unravel, though I didn't see it coming then. The leaves outside my window had turned that deep amber color I've always loved, the kind that makes you think of warm apple pie and second chances. My little house sat at the end of Maple Street, modest and unassuming, with a front porch that sagged just slightly on the left side. 43 years I'd lived there. 43 years of memories soaked into those wooden floors. My husband, Thomas, and I had bought it when we were young and foolish and full of dreams. We raised our son, Michael, in that house. I could still see him as a boy, chasing fireflies in the backyard on summer nights, his laughter pure as church bells. Thomas passed 11 years ago, a quiet heart attack while tending his tomato plants, and after that, the house became both my sanctuary and my loneliness. But I managed. I always managed. The paint was peeling in places, yes. The carpet in the hallway had worn thin where Thomas used to pace when he was thinking. The kitchen cabinets didn't close quite right anymore, and sometimes the pipes sang opera in the middle of the night. But it was mine, paid for with decades of Thomas's factory wages and my weekend shifts at the diner. No mortgage. No debt. Just a simple life built on honest work and honest love. Then Michael met her. Vanessa. Lord, even her name sounded expensive. I remember the first time he brought her to Sunday dinner. She arrived 20 minutes late, tottering up my front steps in heels so high I wondered how she could walk. Everything about her gleamed, her hair, her jewelry, her teeth. She was beautiful, I'll give her that. The kind of beautiful that makes people turn their heads and whisper. But beauty without kindness is just a pretty mask hiding an ugly truth. Mom, this is Vanessa, Michael said, his face glowing with that special light men get when they think they've found the one. I hugged her, flowers still dusting my apron from the rolls I'd been making. Welcome, sweetheart. I'm so happy to finally meet you. She returned the hug limply, like someone handling something distasteful. It's nice to be here, she said, her eyes already scanning my living room with barely concealed judgment. That should have been my first clue. But mothers, especially mothers of only children, have a terrible habit of seeing what we want to see. I told myself she was just nervous, that she'd warm up, that love would smooth her sharp edges the way rain smooths river stones. I was wrong. The wedding was big, too big if you ask me, held at some country club I couldn't pronounce. I wore my best dress, the navy one I'd saved for special occasions, and tried not to notice how out of place I looked among Vanessa's family and friends, all dripping in diamonds and designer labels. Michael was so happy though. So utterly, completely happy. And for that, I swallowed my discomfort and smiled. To new beginnings, I toasted at the reception, raising my glass. Vanessa's mother, sitting across from me in a dress that probably cost more than my monthly pension, clinked her glass against mine with a smile that never reached her eyes. Indeed, she said coolly. The first year of their marriage passed quietly. Michael would visit sometimes, less and less as the months went on, always with apologies about how busy they were. They'd bought a house, he explained, in that new development on the hill. The estates, he called it, voice proud. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a kitchen with granite countertops and stainless steel everything. That's wonderful, honey, I said, genuinely happy for him. When can I see it? Soon. Soon never came. Instead, one Saturday afternoon in October, that October I mentioned, they showed up at my door unannounced. Michael looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Vanessa looked radiant, like a cat who just caught a particularly fat mouse. "Surprise visit," Michael said, kissing my cheek. "Oh, how lovely." I ushered them inside, suddenly conscious of the Afghan draped over my worn couch, the water stain on the ceiling I kept meaning to paint over. "I was just making some soup. Are you hungry?" "We can't stay long," Vanessa said quickly, wrinkling her nose as she surveyed my living room. "We have dinner reservations at Bissou at 7. "Of course," I said, trying not to feel stung. "Well, let me at least get you some tea." In the kitchen, I heard her whisper, though it wasn't really a whisper at all. "Michael, honey, how did you grow up in this place? It's so depressing." My hands froze on the kettle. "Vanessa," Michael said, his voice low, warning. "I'm serious. Look at these cabinets. And that couch, is that from the 70s? How can she stand living like this?" I stood there, kettle in hand, feeling something crack inside my chest. Not my heart, that had been broken before and survived. Something else. Something like dignity. "She's my mother," Michael said quietly. "I know, but honestly, you should talk to her about moving somewhere nicer. This whole neighborhood is practically falling apart." I walked back into the living room carrying the tea tray, my hands steady despite the storm brewing inside me. I set it down gently on the coffee table, the same coffee table Thomas had built with his own hands 30 years ago. "Here we are," I said, my voice calm as Sunday morning. Vanessa had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. Michael couldn't meet my eyes. We made small talk for 20 excruciating minutes. She told me about their house, their new car, the vacation they were planning to Tuscany. Every sentence was a small blade, cutting away at the life I'd built, the choices I'd made, the simple peace I'd found in my simple home. When they finally left, Vanessa air-kissed my cheek and said, "Thanks for having us, Alice. Maybe next time we'll take you out to dinner somewhere nice." The door closed behind them. I stood in my living room, my poor, shabby, depressing living room, and felt the weight of her judgment settle over my shoulders like ash. That night, I sat in Thomas's old chair and stared at nothing. The house was quiet except for the pipes singing their nightly song. I thought about calling Michael, asking him why he'd let her speak that way, why he hadn't defended this home where he'd taken his first steps and lost his first tooth. But I didn't. Because sometimes mothers have to be silent to give their sons room to become men. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that 3 months later, my phone would ring in the middle of the night. That Michael's voice would crack with panic as he spoke words I never thought I'd hear. "We're losing everything. We need help." And that's when everything I'd been taught about forgiveness, about pride, about what it means to be family, would be tested in ways I never imagined. That October afternoon, as I watched their expensive car disappear down my modest street, I made myself a promise. I would never beg for their respect. But what I didn't promise, what I couldn't promise, was what I would do when their world came crashing down and mine was the only shelter left standing. Because life, I've learned, has a funny way of turning tables. And the sound of that turning was already beginning to echo through their perfect house on the hill. 3 months. That's all it took for the universe to start rewriting Vanessa's story. 3 months between her laughter in my kitchen and the night my phone rang at 2:47 a.m., shattering the silence like a stone through stained glass. I knew before I answered. A mother always knows when her child is drowning. "Mom." Michael's voice was barely a whisper, broken and small. The same voice he'd used as a boy when he'd skinned his knee or lost a spelling bee. "Mom, are you awake?" I sat up, my heart already racing. "What's wrong, honey?" The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the line had gone dead. Then I heard it, a sob, raw and helpless, the kind that comes from a man who's run out of ways to be strong. "We're losing the house, Mom. We're losing everything." The details came out slowly over the next few days, like pulling threads from a sweater until the whole thing unravels in your hands. Michael came to visit alone. Vanessa wouldn't leave their house, he said, too ashamed to face anyone. He sat at my kitchen table, the same one where he'd done his homework as a boy, and told me everything. The investment. That's what he called it. Some business opportunity Vanessa's brother had pitched them at a family dinner. Ground floor, he'd said. Can't miss. They'd taken out a second mortgage on the house they'd barely finished furnishing, and poured every penny into it. Retirement savings. Emergency funds. Everything. It was supposed to double our money in 6 months, Michael said, his voice hollow. Vanessa was so excited. She'd already picked out the yacht club she wanted to join. I poured him coffee in one of my chipped mugs and didn't say a word about yacht clubs or choices made in greed's shadow. The company folded 3 weeks ago, he continued. Turned out it was basically a pyramid scheme. We're not the only ones who lost money, but... He laughed bitterly. We're probably the only ones stupid enough to bet the whole house on it. Oh, Michael. The bank sent the foreclosure notice yesterday. We have 60 days. He looked up at me then, and I saw something in his eyes that broke my heart. Shame, deeper than any I'd ever seen. Vanessa's parents won't help. They said we made our bed and now we have to lie in it. Her mother actually said she was disappointed in our financial decisions. I bit my tongue to keep from saying that Vanessa's mother probably taught her daughter every cruel word she knew. What about your friends? I asked gently. We've been calling everyone. Her sorority sisters. My college roommate who started that tech company. Even our neighbors. He stared into his coffee. Nobody's answering. It's like we've become invisible overnight. Turns out when you spend years bragging about your success, people really enjoy watching you fail. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same people they'd impressed with their granite countertops and Tuscany vacations were nowhere to be found now that the shine had worn off. Where will you go? I asked. He was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, Mom. We've been looking at apartments, but with our credit destroyed and no savings. He trailed off, then added quietly, we might have to move to a different state. Start over somewhere cheaper. Somewhere no one knows us. My son. My only child. Talking about running away like a criminal fleeing judgment. What does Vanessa say about all this? His jaw tightened. She's not handling it well. She hasn't left the bedroom in 3 days. Won't answer the door when her friends come by. She just lies there, staring at the ceiling, talking about how embarrassed she is. How she can't face anyone. Embarrassed, I thought. Not sorry. Not humbled. Embarrassed. But I kept that thought to myself too. 2 weeks later, they came to my door together. It was raining, one of those cold November rains that seeps into your bones and makes you think winter might never end. They stood on my sagging porch, soaking wet, looking like ghosts of the people who'd visited me that autumn afternoon. Vanessa had changed. Not just her appearance, though her designer clothes hung looser now, and her hair lacked its usual glossy perfection, but something deeper. The light in her eyes had dimmed. The sharp edge in her voice had dulled to something flat and lifeless. Mom, Michael said, and I heard the question before he asked it. I opened the door wider. Come in before you catch your death. They stepped inside, dripping rain onto my worn welcome mat. Vanessa looked around my living room, the same room she'd called depressing, and I watched her face carefully. No judgment this time. Just defeat. We brought some things, Michael said, gesturing to the car. Just a few boxes. Most of our furniture. He swallowed hard. We had to sell it to pay what we could to the bank. I see. Mom, I know this is a lot to ask. He was crying now, my strong, proud son, tears mixing with rain on his cheeks. But could we stay here? Just for a little while. Until we figure things out. We'll pay rent. We'll help with bills. Michael. I put my hand on his arm. This is your home. It's always been your home. Vanessa made a sound, half sob, half gasp, and I turned to look at her. She was staring at me with something like wonder in her eyes, as if I'd just performed a miracle instead of doing what any mother would do. I don't understand, she whispered. After everything I said. After how I treated you. No, you probably don't understand, I said quietly. But maybe that's the problem. Maybe you've spent so much time collecting things that shine, you forgot to recognize what actually matters. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. But, I continued, my voice softer now, you're going to learn. Because that's what this house does. It teaches you what you need to know. Whether you like it or not. That first night was strange and silent. I gave them Michael's old room, the one I'd kept exactly as he'd left it, like a shrine to his childhood. They moved in with 2 suitcases and 3 cardboard boxes. Everything they owned in the world fit into my hall closet. At dinner, I made pot roast, the same pot roast I'd made every Sunday when Michael was growing up. We ate at my small table, our knees almost touching, using my mismatched plates and bent forks. Vanessa picked at her food, her eyes red from crying. "This is delicious," she said quietly. "Thank you." They were the first kind words she'd ever spoken to me. After they went to bed, I stood in my kitchen washing dishes and listening to the old pipes sing. Through the wall, I could hear Vanessa crying, soft, broken sobs that sounded like something inside her was finally cracking open. And I wondered, as I dried my chipped plates one by one, whether she was crying for what she'd lost or for what she'd never really had to begin with. That night, as I lay in my bed listening to the rain drum against my roof, my poor, shabby, depressing roof that never leaked, I thought about pride and humility, about karma and grace. Vanessa was under my roof now, dependent on my charity, living in the home she'd mocked. And I had a choice to make. I could be bitter. I could remind her daily of her cruelty, throw her words back at her like stones, make her feel every ounce of shame she'd tried to make me feel. Or I could do something else entirely. Something harder. Something that would require more strength than revenge ever could. But what that something was, and whether Vanessa was capable of learning the lesson I was about to teach her, remained to be seen. Because transformation doesn't happen overnight. And some souls need to be completely broken before they can be remade. They say it takes 21 days to form a habit. I don't know if that's true, but I do know it took exactly 3 weeks for Vanessa to stop looking at my house like a prison and start seeing it for what it really was, a home. The first week was the hardest. She moved through my rooms like a ghost, silent and hollow-eyed, jumping every time the pipes rattled or the floorboards creaked. She'd sit on my old couch, the one from the 70s she'd mocked, and stare at her phone, watching her former friends post pictures of brunches and shopping trips and all the things she used to do. Things that now existed in a world she could no longer afford to enter. Michael found work quickly, thank God. Nothing fancy, just stocking shelves at the hardware store on 5th Street, but honest work that put food on the table. He'd leave before dawn and come home after dark, his shoulders bent with exhaustion and something heavier. Maybe. Or the weight of lessons learned too late. But Vanessa? She stayed inside those first weeks, hiding from the world like a criminal from the law. Until the morning I changed everything. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays are when I volunteer at the community kitchen on Elm Street. I'd been doing it for years, ever since Thomas passed. He used to say that the best way to heal your own pain is to ease someone else's. So every Tuesday, I'd put on my apron and serve soup to people who had even less than I did. That particular Tuesday, I walked into the living room where Vanessa sat curled up in her usual spot, still in her pajamas at 10 in the morning, scrolling mindlessly through her phone. "Get dressed," I said. She looked up, startled. "What?" "Get dressed. You're coming with me." "Where?" Her voice carried that edge of panic. The fear that I might be taking her somewhere she'd be seen, recognized, judged. "Somewhere you need to be." 20 minutes later, we pulled up to St. Mary's Community Kitchen. The building was old, brick worn smooth by decades of weather, with a wooden sign hanging crooked above the door. Vanessa stared at it like I'd brought her to the edge of the world. "What is this place?" she asked quietly. "This is where people come when they have nowhere else to go. When their pride can't fill their stomachs and their shame can't keep them warm." I turned to look at her. "This is where you learn what poverty really means." She flinched, but she followed me inside. Sister Margaret greeted us at the door, a tiny woman with silver hair and a smile that could melt ice. "Alice. Right on time. And who's this?" "This is Vanessa. My daughter-in-law." She'll be helping today. If Sister Margaret noticed Vanessa's designer sweatpants or the remnants of her manicure, she didn't mention it. She just handed her an apron and pointed toward the kitchen. Welcome, dear. We're serving chili today. Hope you like getting your hands dirty. For the next 4 hours, Vanessa served food to people who'd lost everything. Not because of bad investments or foolish choices, but because of illness, layoffs, bad luck, or circumstances beyond their control. She ladled chili into bowls for the elderly man who'd lost his pension when his company folded. She poured coffee for the young mother with 2 kids and no husband, working 3 jobs and still unable to afford rent. She handed napkins to the veteran who'd come home from war with medals but no benefits, sleeping in his car behind the grocery store. And I watched her face change with every person she served. The judgment melted away first. Then the self-pity. Then something deeper. The walls she'd built around her heart began to crack, letting in light she'd spent years keeping out. During our break, we sat on the back steps sharing sandwiches. Vanessa was quiet, staring at her hands that had once only held shopping bags and champagne glasses, now stained with chili and humility. That woman, she said finally, the one with the 2 kids. She thanked me. Like really thanked me. For a bowl of chili. Her voice broke. She was so grateful for something so simple. That's because she knows what matters, I said gently. She knows that kindness feeds the soul longer than pride ever could. Vanessa wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I was her, wasn't I? In your kitchen that day. Taking your kindness for granted. Judging you for having less when you were offering everything. Yes, I said simply. Because sometimes the truth needs no decoration. She sobbed then, deep, wrenching sobs that sounded like years of ugliness finally breaking free. I'm so sorry, Alice. I'm so sorry. I was horrible to you. I looked down on you because you didn't have what I had, and now. She gestured at herself helplessly. Now I'm the poor one. Now I'm the one who needs help. And you who I mocked, you're the only one who opened your door. I put my arm around her shoulders and let her cry. Because sometimes that's all you can do, hold someone while they break, and trust that they'll rebuild themselves into something better. Vanessa, I said when her tears finally slowed, you're not poor because you lost your house. You were poor when you had it. Poor in spirit. Poor in gratitude. Poor in understanding what makes a life rich. I tilted her chin up so she'd meet my eyes. But poverty of the soul can be cured. If you're willing to do the work. How? She whispered. How do I fix what I've broken? One bowl of chili at a time, I said. One kind word. One humble moment. You become rich by giving, not by taking. By lifting others up instead of looking down on them. That Tuesday changed something fundamental in Vanessa. She started coming with me every week to the community kitchen. Then she started helping me around the house, not because I asked, but because she wanted to. She learned to cook my recipes, to patch the holes in my Afghans, to appreciate the beauty in things that had been loved well and long. She got a job. Nothing glamorous, just cashiering at the grocery store, but she did it with dignity. She'd come home and tell me about the customers, especially the elderly ones who reminded her of me. She started seeing people instead of their price tags. And slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice, my daughter-in-law became my daughter. One evening, 3 months after they'd moved in, I found her sitting on the front porch watching the sunset. I settled into the chair beside her, the one that matched hers, both worn and comfortable and exactly where they needed to be. I used to think happiness came from having the biggest house, she said quietly, the nicest things, the most impressive life. And now? I asked. She smiled, a real smile, soft and genuine. Now I think happiness comes from being someone worth having around. From being the kind of person who helps instead of judges. Who lifts instead of mocks. She reached over and took my hand. Thank you for teaching me that. Thank you for giving me a roof over my head when I didn't deserve it. And more than that, thank you for showing me what it means to be truly rich. I squeezed her hand, my heart full in a way it hadn't been in years. You're welcome, sweetheart. You're finally home. And she was. We both were. Because home isn't about square footage or granite countertops. It's about the people who fill it with love, second chances, and the kind of grace that transforms both the giver and the receiver. That old house on Maple Street, with its peeling paint and creaky floors? It had done what it always did best. It had taken someone broken and loved them back to whole. And karma? Well, karma had come full circle just like I knew it would. Not with revenge, but with redemption. Not with punishment, but with purpose. And that, my dear, is the sweetest justice of all. Well, my dear, you've stayed with me through this whole journey, and for that, I'm grateful. This story, like all stories worth telling, carries a lesson we all need to remember. The measure of our wealth isn't in what we have, but in what we're willing to give when someone needs it most. If this tale touched your heart, I'd be honored if you'd subscribe to Grandma Alice Stories. There are so many more lessons to share, so many more stories where life teaches us what we need to know. Sometimes gently, sometimes not. Give this video a thumbs up if you believe in second chances and the power of humble grace. Share it with someone who needs to hear that karma isn't about revenge, it's about growth. And leave a comment below telling me, have you ever been judged unfairly, only to become the very person who helped those who judged you? I read every single one, and your stories inspire mine. Remember, my dear, pride builds walls, but humility builds bridges. Choose your building materials wisely. Until next time, keep your heart soft and your doors open. Life has a funny way of bringing back around exactly what we need to learn. With all my love, Grandma Alice. The richest people aren't those who have the most, they're those who need the least and give the most.